I am so glad you convinced me that the family car should be the Defender 110. It is so beautiful inside, it's so comfortable, and it just feels indestructible.
Yes, it really is. I've been waiting a long time for the new model to come out. The Defender 110, I'm telling you, it's my favorite car of all times. It's my third one. You know, I have stories of going off road. The guy managed the group. He was like, "What are you doing in this beautiful car?" I'm like, "I'm going off road." He's like, "Are you sure? Because you can use one of ours." And then they look like Mad Max cars. I'm like, "No, no, 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 we're going to do this." And he was shocked.
Wow. Well, it's great because the Defender has been reimagined for 21st century adventure, and its unparalleled off-road ability as well as its robust interior are invaluable whether you're headed towards uncharted territory or just a weekend of exploration. The Defender 110 tackles challenging surroundings with absolute confidence. The SUV conveys strength outside and in, featuring peerless technology like an intuitive driver display and an award-winning infotainment system. That's my favorite part, to keep you connected no matter where the journey takes you. Adventure is unique to everyone, and so is the Defender. Choose from the two-door Defender 90, the four-door Defender 110, or the larger Defender 130 with the ability to seat up to 8 passengers. You'll find uncompromising performance in all three. So pack up and go even further with the Defender 110. Learn more at landroverusa.com/defender.
These days, we're all investors, trying to be smart with our money despite our worst impulses. But at iShares, we believe that deep down inside of every investor is a better investor. One that's just waiting to be let out. Explore iShares ETFs and insights and let your best investor out. Visit iShares.com for more information.
This isn't your average business podcast, and he's not your average host. This is the James Altucher Show.
Welcome to a new episode of the James Altucher Show, and today I've been really interested in the conversation happening about student loan forgiveness. And of course, like everything else, it's gotten political. And because it gets here's the saying, it's just a mantra on this show: politics make people stupid. So the fact that this issue has become political makes people polarized so much in either one direction or the other that they're forgetting the gray area in between. Every issue on the planet has a gray area in between. There's nuances, there's subtleties. That's why big issues and decisions like this are difficult, because there's no black and white answer. But when things are political and everybody's, running with the crowd, you either believe one crowd or the other crowd, and then you don't change your beliefs ever, and you don't think in a nuanced way ever. So I want to dissect this issue a little bit, and as the cliche goes, talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, and how we can take advantage of it, how we can benefit maybe from this, regardless of whether it's fair or unfair. And I don't know, I just want to kind of riff on this a little bit with my co-hosts, Robyn Altucher, aka my wife, and Jay Yao, producer extraordinaire. Jay, you just gave a talk on audio engineering at the best conference on the planet for podcasts,
Yes.
podcast movement.
Yes.
And
Yep.
did you have a good time?
I have a great time. The funny thing is I was so nervous. After my talk, I had stomach cramp right away. Like right when I say thanks, I give a bow. I always bow because I'm Asian, so we always bow. I give a bow. I
How do you
really
bow?
give a bow.
Well, how do you give a bow? Do you like put your arm over your stomach and lean over it, or do you just like have your hands by your sides, your arms by your side, and you bow?
I think I think I learned this from my mentor when I was younger. So like, when I show respect to people, I always like put like, it's almost like a praying hand, but bow a little bit. It's like who is the president in Germany? What's her
Angela
name?
Merkel.
Mhm.
Yeah, and you know how she always have her hands stick together, her fingers stick together like
I've never noticed that.
Oh yeah, they call it the Illuminati hand because it looks like an Illuminati symbol.
Yeah.
I do that all the time, and then and so it's kind of like that, but straight up and bow a little bit. I do that like even before I start the speaks. I do that too, and I have cramp right away. Like no joke, it's like full on cramp, And then it's not like you have to go to the bathroom type of crime. It's like the crime that you can't do anything about it. So I literally just lean in front and
Aw.
talking to people.
I think public speaking is like the worst thing for
Oh, yeah.
stomach conditions because
It is.
no matter like I don't really get nervous anymore on a talk, but I did for many years, and I would be like terrified before giving a talk, like terrified. One time I was speaking at a conference, I was so nervous. I left the conference. I had 5 minutes to go before my talk, and I was convinced I was just going to leave the conference and never return any phone calls from anyone again from that conference. Like I was just going to leave
Wait.
and not show up. But of course I did show up, but I was so scared. I
Oh.
couldn't believe it. And of course, when I
Yeah.
did comedy for many years, I never stopped being scared before a comedic performance. Because in a weird way, that's even scarier in the sense that I have no idea who the audience is. Like if I'm speaking at let's say a stock or a finance conference, I know what the audience wants, and they're choosing to come to my talk, so I know that they're inclined to like the talk. But with comedy, you might walk up there and you have no idea who you're talking to, and they're probably going to start off hating you for some reason. Maybe I don't know.
I felt like there's some people just take pride in shitting on comedian. Like it's their purpose to like hustle you guys.
Oh my god! I mean, I fortunately was not heckled that much in the years I was doing this, but there was one time it was so bad, like everybody in the audience hated me. That was I basically got drove out of town. Like they did not like me. It was the crack capital of the world, and I won't say what city it was because I don't want to insult that city, but maybe Hartford, Connecticut should be insulted a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that story.
Oh my God. And I didn't even know. Anyway, that's another story. But also, I want to mention that Robyn pretty soon is going to be starting her own podcast, Moms and Stocks, where Robyn is the best investor I know. And she's going to talk about stocks. I'm going to be her co-host, where I will mansplain all of the stocks that she chooses. And I'll
Imagine that actually happen.
mansplain investing to her, even though she's probably a better investor than me. And she's going to also talk about being a mom while being a great investor.
And then you have to mansplain how to be a mom too?
I mansplain good parenting to her, but not being a mom. But you're going to pick stocks, right, on this? How many stocks per episode are you going to pick?
I have no idea. But I like it. I like this idea because it allows me to bring in my geopolitical stuff.
Yeah. We just want to know how to make
That's
money.
the most fun for me.
I'm starting the mansplaining right away. I'm even talking over you right now.
But it does affect stocks. What happens in the rest of the world? I feel people.
Right.
We're just too myopic here. We're just all too much into ourselves here in the States, and it really does help to understand a lot of political issues that are happening around the world.
Oh yeah, and it's all connected. So
it is all connected. Yes.
And
So it'll
also,
be
like,
fun.
will you be recommending any meme stocks or just like stocks?
No,
like real stocks?
I don't really do that.
she's a long-term investor. You're not really a trader.
Oh,
No.
okay.
You're like, I would say your average holding period is between 3 months and a year. Would you say that's right? Or 3 months
wow.
and 2 years?
It really just depends on what's happening. If a war breaks out somewhere, I'm gonna trade.
Well, okay, we'll talk more about this on moms and moms and stocks.
Mom and stocks.
Moms and stocks. Which, by the way, we looked this up before. When you have a repeating consonant like literature and letters, that's consonants, and apparently repeating vowels like moms and stocks has a repeating o. That's called assonance. I did not know that.
Yeah.
It's kind of a Beavis and Butthead kind of word. Assonance.
Yeah.
You're so funny.
But anyway, I'm looking forward to we're gonna
Yes, I'm excited.
Jay, how long does it take to officially get the podcast like hosted everywhere? We're gonna do our first episode on Friday, but we're not gonna release on Friday. We need to get it all set up.
We can get it done within a week or two. Because I can do the cover art very easily. I can just pick a intro music very easily. I'll make sure put a lot of money sound, ka-ching sound in the intro music.
Okay.
And then a lot of baby crying because mom and stocks.
All right.
All right.
Sounds
work
like you're
on
being
that.
really creative here.
Yeah.
I know.
Oh boy. Okay.
So,
Well,
so wait, I just read something here, and then we're going to get to student loans. But crypto firm fronted by Matt Damon accidentally transferred $10.5 million to a woman instead of $100 refund, and
Yep.
she's not giving it back. Like she's
It's,
already
it's
bought a
not
mil.
$100. Sorry, it's not $100 refund. It's $67 refund, I think.
Oh, really? Well, okay. So
Yeah.
even smaller, she
Oh,
was
was
supposed
that
to get,
wrong?
and
Yeah.
so she's already spent almost $1.5 million on buying a 4-bedroom property. Like this money is
what?
gone. So this is why
Well, is it legal though?
they gave her the money. I don't know what the law is. Like if there's an error, you can't
Wait.
like if I wire you money, Jay, by accident, like if let's say I wire you
Yeah.
$10,000 instead of $1,000, I wired you the money, and there's nothing to say that I didn't do it legit.
Oh, right. Because crypto.com, like the one that Matt Damon's running for, technically not a bank, right?
Right.
Yeah. So
So
it's
it's
not
not insured.
illegal. Yeah.
Now, just
It's
to
not
be
illegal
clear,
in French.
like they
Yeah.
have the cash to handle this. I mean, it's a big deal to make a $10 million error. Like somebody should get fired, but it's not going to put them out of business. They have hundreds of millions of dollars of cash lying around.
Yes.
Okay, but
But
when you find $10 million in your account, like, I mean, and you don't have that much, what should you do?
Yeah.
well, I don't know the answer to that, but this segues perfectly into student loan forgiveness because
I know what I
suddenly
would do.
43. I know you would look. The right thing is to do the right thing.
Give it back. Yeah.
Yeah, and I respect that. To be honest, I've never been in that situation. I'd like to think I would do the right thing, but it's tempting to just suddenly have
Yeah. It's
10 million show up in your bank account. And
right.
and look,
I
this is a
have.
company, crypto.com, that should be a little bit more careful and should have consequences for making mistakes with other people's money. They do have hundreds of millions of cash, although 10 million is a big deal to any company. Like if Amazon accidentally sent you 10 million, even though they're a $3 trillion company, they're going to be obsessed with getting it back. So,
Yeah.
Man.
I have similar things to happen to me, but not with money. So I remember when I was in Malaysia, I bought like audio interfaces, like audio devices from a company, and then that like it's not cheap. It's like 1,000. I think it's $1,500. Audio interfaces. They sent two to me,
Mhm.
and then they're like, "Oh, please send it." They're like, "Oh no," they didn't know. They didn't know that they sent it to me. I had to write them back. I'm like, "Hey, I accidentally got this extra unit. Did anything happen or whatever?" And then they're like, "Oh, please send it back to me." My friend is like, "I should sell it," but eventually I did send it back to them. I paid and to send it back.
Yeah.
again, I'm willing
You
to think
paid.
that it's like
Yep.
I'm willing to admit that
Come
it's a
on.
gray area about sending things back, but it
Yeah.
errs on the side of being the right thing to do. So it errs
Yeah.
greatly on that side, I should say. So
But he had to
Yeah.
pay to send it back. That's so funny.
I know.
you're
They didn't credit me or anything.
well, we should sue them just for that. We should have them on the podcast. Ask them, is this how they treat all their good
Like,
customers?
where's my money?
Uh, so look, student loans. In summary, 43 million people roughly are going to be forgiven for up to $20,000 worth of their student loans. And it's going to eliminate about $500 billion in student loan debt. So for the past 17 years, I've been writing how the student loan debt is a massive problem for this coming generation. I mean, I first wrote about it in 2005 for the Financial Times, and it's all come true. But, there's a lot of issues around forgiving student loan debt. The biggest issue is people are talking about, is this fair or unfair? But also, is this societally a moral hazard? Like, is the next generation going to borrow as much as possible now because they're going to assume that later on the government's going to forgive them? Or are people going to stop paying student loans now because they're going to wait for the government to forgive even more? Like, we don't, when you have what's called a moral hazard like this, it creates very warped behavior. And that's why we're in this crisis in the first place, because the government, basically no strings attached, lent trillions of dollars to students, and uh, and so students would take the money, of course, and college presidents would raise tuitions every year faster than inflation, which we've talked about before. And because the government got involved in education, it created this situation where now nobody can afford college without loans.
Right.
Like the
Yeah.
average person cannot go to a private college without taking on too much debt. And by the way, you kind of even have to be, wealthy still because who's going to, you have to be able to pay back this debt. So essentially, this is okay. Let's get to the nuts and bolts, the good and the bad and the ugly. But first, you guys, what do you think? Is it fair or unfair?
Okay, so I have kind of dumb questions. I have seen on internet, especially on Twitter, like people always yell at Twitter. Some people say that taxpayer are not paying for the forgiveness, and some people say that the taxpayer are paying for the forgiveness. And then if you're one of the influencers, say that, hey, if I can pay back my student loan, you can do that too, and then you will get canceled right away. So is the taxpayer actually paying for the loan forgiveness?
It's a great question because no money is actually being transferred, right? The money was
Yes.
transferred a long time ago to these kids who went to college. And now they're just saying, don't give us the money back. So no money is actually being given back. But so you would think, well, since there's no money involved, really, the taxpayer's not paying for it. But that's not quite true. First off, though, it's nuanced. I mean, $500 billion seems like a lot for taxpayers, but it's not that much. The U.S. government collects between 3 and 4 trillion a year from taxes. So $500 billion spread out over the length of these loans, which might be 10 or 20 years or more, is not so much. So it's a small thing to the taxpayer. But it's still, yes, Jay, to answer your question, it is paid for by the taxpayer because the U.S. government, where do they get their money? Like the U.S. government pays for lots of things every year. The U.S. government runs a deficit every year, meaning they spend more than they make. So they either make money from they either get cash from borrowing the money or from making revenues. Well, how does the U.S. government make revenues? They make revenues mostly from taxes, but they have little small things where they make revenues from, like post office stamps. You're paying the government money, and student loans. Those people, those 43 million people, were writing checks every month to the U.S. government. So that was part of the money the U.S. government makes in revenues to pay for things like all the social services you get, all the government services, all the wars we're in, blah, blah, blah. So if they're not making the revenues from other sources, like being paid back, they have to make more money from taxes or borrow money, which kind of just kicks the can to future taxpayers. Because eventually when they borrow money, they have to return the loan. Or they do what the U.S. normally does, which has got us into trouble now. The U.S. borrows money and then they weaken the dollar. It just gets a little more sophisticated. But so they pay back in weaker dollars than they borrowed from. And that's been their strategy for the past 70 years.
You know what I love about fantasy sports is that even though I'm not going to be a great basketball player or a baseball player or a football player or whatever, I feel like I get to participate and make decisions and use my knowledge of these different leagues or these different sports to compete. So it's like I can pick my team or I can pick my favorite players and I could use my knowledge to make predictions and maybe even make money. So with the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League on Prize Picks. This is a league created specifically for combo projections that include two or more players from different sports or leagues. Want to play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz, who's also been a guest on this podcast, and I've been a guest on his? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries for some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. Look, Prize Picks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. What? So I love playing it. I love anywhere where I can use analytical ability with my interests to demonstrate some skill and maybe make some money. And I like the game-like aspect. I do wish they had chess as a category on prizepicks.com, but I'll settle for what they've got. Maybe I should make my own
fantasy chess league. But in any case, I love Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/James. Use code James for a first deposit match up to $100. That's the easiest $100 you're ever going to make. So that's prizepicks.com/James and use code James. Daily fantasy sports made easy. The future of learning is definitely online. Like, it's such BS that you have to spend $200,000 or take $200,000 in loans and go to some fancy school when it's useless. It doesn't guarantee you a job. Most employers, including me, do not care about degrees or grades or anything like that. We want to care that you love what you're doing, that you know what you're doing, in some cases that you have experience or that you're willing to learn. But people in general love learning and are curious. Like, the key to success is curiosity. And I think masterclass.com is the perfect model for online learning. I'm really happy they're sponsoring this episode. If you're going to give a gift, give the gift of learning. Masterclass makes a meaningful gift this season for you and anyone on your list, because both of you can learn from the best to become your best, from leadership to effective communication to cooking. Let me tell you some of the classes I've taken. I've taken comedy from Steve Martin. I mean, can you believe I can take a class from Steve Martin on comedy, or Judd Apatow, my favorite comedy director? I could take an actual class from him on writing. Wolfgang Puck on cooking. Dan Brown on writing, or Judy Bloom, who's been on this podcast, on writing. By the way, Wolfgang Puck also has been on this podcast. It's such a pleasure. I try to take classes all the time from masterclass.com. And whether you're watching Masterclass on TV or listening in audio mode in the app or on their site, the quality speaks for itself. It's like these Masterclass instructors are your own personal mentors that are going to help you reach the next level. How much would it cost to take one-on-one classes on comedy from Steve Martin or on chess from Gary Kasparov? You just wouldn't be able to do it. But it would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. With a Masterclass annual membership, it's $10 a month. Memberships start at $120 a year for unlimited access to one-on-one classes with all 180 plus Masterclass instructors. So it's not just $120 for one instructor. You get all 180 plus Masterclass instructors. Boost your confidence and find practical takeaways you can apply to your life and at work. And if you own a business or are a team leader, use Masterclass to empower and create future-ready employees and leaders. That's the real education in today's world. So this holiday season, you can give one annual membership and get one free at masterclass.com/JAS. JAS, of course, stands for the James Altucher Show. So right now you can get two memberships for the price of one at masterclass.com/JAS. Masterclass.com/JAS. Offer terms apply. Robyn, where do you stand on this? And then I have my opinion.
Well, I think it's really interesting, especially because it's happening right before, the midterm elections, right? And they're allowing people to reapply up until October 31st, which is right before the election.
Wait, are you saying that this might be politically motivated and that people are buying votes with this?
Okay.
That is so. I can't believe you're so
think of how
cynical.
many people this is affecting. So, they're betting on that. But this is what I think is interesting. So since the Biden administration has, since they've been in office, they've actually almost raised the interest rate for these federal loans. They've doubled them, the interest rate almost.
Is that the government, or is that related to the general rate hikes, the interest rate hikes?
Well, they determine what they should be. I mean, I think every year they discuss it and then they decide what they're going to do. But I'm looking at right now, the 2020, 2021 was at 2.75%. Then 21, 22 was 3.73%.
Okay, but there's a reason for that though, and it's not made up by Congress or the government. It's a function of essentially the student loans take the 10-year Treasury bond, which is one of the bonds the government uses to borrow money, and they add a certain number of percentage points to it.
Well, who gets that money though?
The government.
Okay.
But it's a function of the Federal Reserve raising interest rates right now. So
I mean, but all of them, I don't think all of them are set up that way though.
no, not all of them. They just, if they're adjustable rate loans, it's just like
It's
mortgages.
not. Yeah. So because there's two different kinds. So I was just researching this and I thought it was really interesting how, it's changed a lot.
It's funny. I Googled this, and the article I came to, "Why Are Student Loan Interest Rates Rising?" is written by this guy, Mark Kantrowitz, who
Uh-huh.
I actually went to grad school in computer science with he was in my class from 1989 to 1991. And now he became like the world's expert on student loans, nothing to do with computer
Yeah.
science. And he wrote this article. So it's a weird coincidence. So he says that essentially it's a function of the Federal Reserve Board. So with some of these loans, not all of them, with some of these loans, if the Federal Reserve, if the basic interest rates go up, then the rates on the 10-year Treasury go up, and the rates on the student loans are determined by adding some number to the rates on
But
the
why do they
10-year
even
bill.
have it? Why do they even make, money off of it?
Well, the government needs to make money, and it's a
Right. But
loan.
now, okay, but I think it's an investment for, their people. So
Well, okay, that's another issue, is that, then you're talking about, should college be all paid for by the government? That's an investment in people also. But that's just not how we do it. There's a scam going on. We've talked about this before.
Well, that's what I'm
College
saying.
presidents and colleges. I mean, like, why does Harvard have a $50 billion endowment? They don't need it. And
Wait, what?
Yeah.
and
50 billion?
billion.
What did they do
MIT's
with
got
it?
or Columbia's got like 14 billion. MIT's got like
Mhm.
40 billion.
What did they
So
do with it?
they just make more money. So they invest it and they make money, and they claim they use it for scholarships. But if they use it for scholarships, why is it going up every year? So it's just, they're not really using it that
Right.
much. But
Can they? I'm just curious. This is the stupidest questions ever.
that's okay.
Do you think college will be a bank in the future? Like college with so much money, can they be like a bank in the
Well, they are. Colleges are essentially hedge funds that have campuses. So that's what they are now. I mean, the most important person at every college is the person who invests what's called the endowment, the 50 billion, the 10 billion, 50 billion, whatever it is. So that is
Right.
that is the most highly paid person at every college. And those investors who do that successfully are very successful. Like they make a lot of money. They make millions a year, and people write about them, and they write
Oh
books on
my
investing.
God.
Like they're really well
Holy
known.
shit.
And so uh, uh, colleges make a ton of money. The government makes a ton of money. And these kids, remember, student loan debt is the one type of debt you cannot get rid of in a bankruptcy.
Yes.
Like the government will not let you get rid of this debt until now. Of course, now it's just mass forgiving them. Again, 43
Right.
million people will have parts of their loans forgiven. So I just want to say, obviously, for them, it's not a question of fair or unfair. It's like what we were talking about earlier. They're taking the
Mhm.
money. Like, you shouldn't say,
Mhm.
no, I'm not taking the 10,000
Right.
forgiveness. I really want to pay back the government for my overvalued, too expensive education. It's really important for me to pay back the government. No one's saying that. Everyone is going to take the forgiveness that they can get, whether it's fair or unfair. They don't care. And that's fine.
Yeah.
If I were them, I 100% would take it. And
Mhm.
congratulations to them. They worked hard. They had the right timing. I mean, I had to pay back all of my student loans. I paid it all back like in the 90s.
Who's paying for all this? That's what I want to know.
Well, who pays for anything that the government does? It
I
again,
mean, it's so much.
it all
And
comes from, you either have to borrow more or tax more. There's only two ways. And then there's revenues that the government makes from other things, but these are the main sources of cash for the government, is either
So-
borrowing cash or
Yeah.
like who paid for it when we had the stimulus during COVID? We borrowed that money because the US government didn't raise taxes, so they borrowed. The more they borrow, the only way to pay that back when you borrow so much is that either you raise taxes or there's inflation, so that the government makes more in taxes without having to raise taxes. So because all products and goods and revenues
Right.
get inflated, and that means a weaker dollar.
I have a question for you, James. Do you think, right, like with all the student loan forgiveness, let's say, I mean, it is happening right now. People are getting it anyway.
Yeah, they're
So
gonna
do you
get
think
it.
they
It's
will?
happening.
Yeah. Do you think they will want to raise the taxes?
Yeah, they're gonna want to raise taxes at some. Yeah, I mean,
of course,
Then
yeah.
that's already being debated. They want to figure out how to
Right.
like, and look, here's what they should do. By the way, college endowments are not taxable. They should, they are a little bit, and they've changed the rules slightly over the years. But they should just do a massive tax on the endowments and
Yeah,
have the endowments pay for this
Yeah.
exactly.
forgiveness. But
Yeah.
look, again, it's important to note there's a very big positive here, which is that 43 million people are
Yes.
gonna feel a sigh of relief. A lot of them, right because of COVID, there was you didn't have to pay your student loans during COVID, and that ends at the end of this of 2022. So these 43 million people are breathing a sigh of relief.
Yes.
Power to them. Congratulations. Have a big party. Buy a new car. Give to charity. Buy another new car, and do whatever you want. But I will say, technically, it's both fair and unfair, but I'll get to the fair in a second. And again, this is not political. I guess if you think it's fair, you're, I guess on the side of Democrats, and if you think it's unfair, you're on the side of Republicans. That's how it's gotten polarized. But it's a little bit of both. So it's obviously unfair to people who didn't choose to go to college precisely for the reason that they didn't want to get into massive debt. So now
Right.
other people took the risk, and the risk maybe did or didn't pay off because they didn't make money after college, and now they're getting that risk is being paid for by the government. So that's unfair to the people who didn't go to college because they were unwilling to get in that kind of debt. That's those people I feel bad for. It's also unfair to people who just finished paying down their student loans. Like, you should have
Mhm.
defaulted for a while, and then you would have had
No, I don't think
you
that
would have
if you
had
defaulted,
forgiveness.
I don't think you can get it. There are rules.
There's exceptions. There's a lot of exceptions. You could default and get forgiven. It just depends on where you fall, what category you
Oh.
fall in. Um, it's not necessarily fair to people who have less than $10,000 in student loan debt, because they'll cover up to actually 20,000, depending if you got Pell
Pell.
Grants or not. It's unfair to people who used cash to pay down their student loans because of the high interest rates, but took out a mortgage instead to pay for their house. They should have paid for their house with the cash and waited to the student loans to get forgiven. So it's really unfair to people who
Oh.
just bought a house with the debt, but paid their student loans with
Or
cash.
mortgage their house. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Well, everybody takes out a mortgage, and there's certainly no mortgage forgiveness happening. And it's also unfair, because of in quote unquote, to the taxpayer, because eventually down the road, we will pay a little bit more somehow in either taxes or inflation to pay for this. We have to. That's the laws of physics practically. So I think that's a stretch, though. People are saying that because like it's a cliche, and it's the math's a little harder on that. But it's unfair to people who it's most unfair, I think, to people who didn't go to college because they didn't want to get in debt, and now they see all their peers get their debt forgiven, and they're like, oh man, I could have gone to college. So
Wait. Also, I didn't take out student loans. I'm not from the state. Do I have to pay for them?
yeah, if you pay taxes, then
Yeah, I pay
again,
taxes.
in a very small way,
Right.
you're paying for it. And
And the
it's not as
war.
big as people. Yeah, you're paying for everything the government spends. So if the
Right.
government spends some money, they don't have to. And again, the war is a
They're on
debate
a
among
shopping
people. But
spree right now.
I mean, look, the biggest thing you paid for recently, the taxpayer paid for, and they haven't paid for it yet, but they will pay for it. You can't just print up $4 trillion in cash for
Yeah.
stimulus packages. I mean, there's a bill for that, and the bill is coming due right now, which is why the stock market's been falling for the past 8 months and why there's inflation. That's the bill. You have to pay, for the government's excesses one way or the other. This is how we're paying it for it now, is that our wealth is everybody's wealth in the stock market or real estate or crypto is starting to decline because the stock market has gone down so much because of
Right.
fears about inflation. Also, you're spending more and making less because of inflation. So this is how we're paying for government excesses. This is yet another government excess. So one way or the other, you do pay for it. But I also think this is fair, and this is where the nuance comes in. No one ever wants to admit there's nuance if you're polarized. It's like, oh,
Mhm.
you must be a fascist if you don't think it's fair or not. But I'm going to say it is fair a little bit, because these students should never have been given the opportunity to borrow the money in the first place. Like, it made college education unfair because colleges took advantage of the free money. Kids, when they're 18 years old, who lends an 18-year-old $100,000, which is I've met people $300,000-$400,000 in student loan debt. You don't even have, you can't even borrow money to buy a car until you're in your 20s. Like who lends so much money to teenagers? The government does, because it's they made a law saying you have to pay it back or it will haunt you for your life.
Yeah, and no one's to give me loans to buy my car too, and I'm 30 freaking 4.
Why didn't you get loan to buy a car?
I mean, I get loans, but like a higher loans. Like I went to like 6 banks. 6 banks said no because one, I just moved. Two, I'm not American.
Oh yeah, so they don't know if you're just gonna skip the country and move back to
Yeah,
Malaysia.
but I have a very good credit.
They should call me. You're not even. I'm holding on to your passport until you work 10 years for me. So
You're
Pretty much.
indentured.
you can't leave the country. So,
That's funny.
but just the reality is, young people in general
Yeah.
don't understand risk. You don't finish growing that part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, till you're like mid-20s. It's unfair that they lend these kids money, and as we mentioned earlier, it ruins the whole system. Anyway, if anything, colleges have made this an unfair system. Well, the government started first being unfair. Colleges then were unfair by raising tuitions faster than inflation every single year since the GI Bill was passed in 1946 or 7, and which pays college for GIs. So college is like, okay, yeah, well, we'll just raise tuitions because the government's sending it direct. Like students never see the money that they're borrowing; it goes directly to the college. So colleges take no risk, and they keep raising money faster than inflation because they have no risk of losing their customer because the government is ultimately their customer. So, and again, colleges should pay part of this. We talked about their endowments. They have more than $500 billion in endowments. They should pay part of this.
Yeah.
So,
I don't know why not. Why haven't they done that?
because it's like the military industrial complex, like this intricate interweaving of who was the president of Harvard? Like, you see the movie The Social Network, where about Facebook. Well, the Winklevoss twins complained to the president of Harvard. Who was he? He was Larry Summers, Clinton's former Secretary of the Treasury. So there's this interlinking between government and college where they go back and forth with each other.
Wow.
Like, oh, when you finish working for government, you get paid a couple million a year being the president of Harvard or wherever you go. So it's just an unfair system. People are like getting mad at the young people who are getting their student loans forgiven. Again, power to those students. It's unfortunate there's a lot of people who are basically hurt by this because maybe they didn't go to college, or maybe they paid off all their loans, or they paid off their loans and borrowed for a house, all the things I said before. But don't hate the player, hate the game. The game was first created by the government. It was contributed to by colleges, and power. I feel bad for the people who are, it's unfair to me. I paid off every dollar of my loans, but power to the people who got forgiven.
But there are people that really, and need it. The ones that had the Pell, they live off of what, under 20,000 a year or something like that. So those people really do, need it.
Oh my gosh, I love these clothes. Mizzen and Main. That's Mizzen and Main. It really is the most comfortable work clothes. Travel clothes. I had to travel this whole week. I'm traveling for a week and a half, and I just took Mizzen and Main clothes with me. Close out 2023 in style with comfortable, breathable, packable, and machine washable pieces from Mizzen and Main. As you wrap up your year-end goals, enjoy a Mizzen and Main dress shirt that you can wear confidently. I like that they've very, very just nice, solid colors. I don't really like to get all fancy in patterns and everything, although they do have some pattern shirts, but very comfortable clothes, stretchable pants. It's just super comfortable, but they look professional, and you can wear them casually or professionally. I like some of their flannel shirts or untuck shirts. I love untuck. I never tuck in. So again, whether you're shopping for a special someone or giving yourself the gift you really want, I just buy myself gifts. Mizzen and Main is the perfect gift for any guy who works, travels, and cares about looking and feeling great. As you could tell by my many photos across the internet, I care about looking fantastic. I'm practically a model. And let's be honest, every guy loves to look great. So again, shop now at mizzenandmain.com and save 20%
when you spend $130 or more using promo code James. That's promo code James at Mizzen and Maine, Mizzen and Maine.com. This is such a valuable service for all business owners, big businesses, small businesses, doesn't matter. I wish I had this in the many different businesses that I've started. Sometimes it seems like your business is humming, but then suddenly you don't understand it. You're starting to fall behind. You're not understanding where your costs are, where your revenues are, where your payments are. Teams are buried in all sorts of like BS work, and you can't seem to close the books. So you need like one dashboard, one source of truth. I'm jealous of this business, NetSuite from Oracle, of course, NetSuite by Oracle. I wish I'd come up with this idea. It's a brilliant concept to have all your business intelligence on one dashboard. This is why you need to know these three numbers: 37,000, 25, and 1. So 37,000, that's the number of businesses which have upgraded to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite is the number one cloud financial system, streamlining accounting, financial management, inventory, HR, and more. 25. NetSuite turns 25 this year. That's 25 years of helping businesses do more with less, close their books in days, not weeks, and drive down costs. 1, because your business is one of a kind. So you get a customized solution for all of your key performance indicators, your KPIs, in one efficient system with one source of truth. Manage risk, get reliable forecasts, and improve margins. Everything you need to grow all in one place. So right now, download NetSuite's popular KPI checklist designed to give you consistently excellent performance absolutely free at netsuite.com/James. That's netsuite.com/James to get your own KPI checklist. netsuite.com/James. So I just said how it's unfair. I said how it's fair, or at least don't blame the player, don't blame the students. But one thing that should be noted, very important, this is coming from the Democrats. And look, I'm not, as Robyn, you know very well, I don't vote. I'm not Democrat. I'm not Republican. I try to be as neutral as possible on this podcast. But I'm in favor of taxes that are progressive, meaning people who are lower income shouldn't pay a higher percentage of taxes than
Right.
people who are higher income. That's called a regressive tax. It hurts lower income. So, like, for example, the lottery is a form of regressive tax. Who plays the lottery? Lower income people play the lottery, not higher income people. And the lottery is a scam. Like, the odds are against you. You're never going to win the lottery. And if you play it for 1 billion days in a row, you still might not win the lottery. So it hurts lower income people. It's how governments raise money. State governments raise money from lotteries, and it hurts the lower income people in their state. It's a regressive tax. This is also a regressive tax. And I looked this up so it's regressive in the sense that wealthier families send their kids to college to begin with than lower income families. And so I looked this up. It's on nces.ed.gov. It's on the government site. The enrollment rate for college for those from high income families is 83%, and from low income families is 67%. So basically, we just forgave wealthier people on average more than we forgave lower income people from lower income families. So that's a regressive tax. Like, it benefited higher income people and did not benefit lower income people. So you would think, and look, I do think the Democrats are really good at thinking about things in terms of, I mean, they're called progressives. So they're good at thinking about things in terms of progressive versus regressive. For some reason, they decided to make essentially what this is a tax on the people, and they decided to make it favor wealthier people, maybe because also those are the people who vote. I don't know. So I'm being cynical too. Maybe they just didn't think about that at all, because I haven't seen any articles talking about how this is a regressive tax, but it is. Then there's a question in terms of policy: will this increase inflation? So during COVID, it was something like $4 trillion the government spent. Now it's $500 million. So the answer is And what happened because of the $4 trillion? Well, now we have the highest inflation in, I don't know, what is it, like 40 years. So since the early 80s, we have the highest inflation. So that's because of all the money printed during COVID. Well, now essentially we're kind of printing a $500 billion, not as much. So of course, this is going to potentially increase inflation. If the economy doesn't grow as fast as you increase the money supply, there's inflation because there's going to be more people. Here's what's going to happen. Even though no money is actually handed to anybody in this, if you're paying $1,000 a month in paying down your loans, well, suddenly now you have an extra $1,000 a month. And guess what? Americans have a 0% savings rate. So everyone is going to spend that money.
Mhm.
And that when you spend money faster than the economy is growing, inflation is created. So this will probably, it won't grow inflation that much because, the economy is now open as opposed to COVID and the economy is growing, but it's definitely not a good thing for inflation. It's more likely to increase inflation than not.
Right. So basically, the government's not just going to give, cut a check for $10,000 to somebody. What they're doing is they're saying, okay, you don't have to pay your $75 a month anymore.
Right, but here's the thing.
Right?
Let's say, yes, that's exactly right. But that is the same thing as giving someone money. If someone has,
Yes.
let's say someone has $100,000 cash in the bank, and they also have $100,000 in mortgage debt or student loan debt or whatever, if they're worth zero, $100,000 in assets versus $100,000 in debts, they're worth
Mhm.
zero. But if
Mhm.
you say, oh, your $100,000, don't worry about that. The debt, don't worry about that. Well, now you're worth $100,000. So
All right.
everybody, all the 43 million people as a group are going to be a $500 billion wealthier. And with the knowledge that there's a 0% savings rate, they're going to
Mhm.
spend over time that $500 billion. They're going to spend it. So the problem with that is, of course, potential for inflation. But here's the good. And here's my final opinion. I don't care fair or unfair. More money I just care short term, to be honest, about stock market and crypto markets and real estate markets, because when those things go up, people feel good, people feel happier. The US in general, if you want to start a business or get jobs, more people are starting businesses, more people are being given jobs. Like, because of this inflation right now, we're at one of the lowest unemployment rates in history, and wage growth, I mean, and employment itself, there's jobs increasing every month because so much money is being spent still from the COVID stimulus money. Now this is more money being spent, which again could increase inflation. But if I'll use analogy from poker. If you're at a poker table and you're a good poker player, you want the worst poker players to get as much free money as possible, because eventually you'll get that. And so
Right.
my assumption is that of these 43 million people who are going to spend money, they're eventually going to put it in the stock market and the crypto markets and the real estate markets. And so for people who own assets that the 43 million are going to buy, you're going to benefit. And so if whether or not you think this is fair or unfair, don't be angry, start a business.
Yeah.
It's a waste of time to be angry, but you could be starting a business. There's $500 billion more in the economy, more than $500 billion, because it's the whole money multiplier. People spend $1, whoever they spent it on, like the newspaper guy buys a flower with $1. The flower guy buys a coffee with $1. So $1 is really worth a $5 boost roughly to the economy. So this might be a
Right.
$2.5 trillion boost to the overall economy. I love it. Whether it's fair or unfair, I don't care. I just want to be invested in the things that everybody's buying.
Now, what's interesting too is that they are only forgiving, the federal loans, not the personal student
Oh, is it
loans.
different?
Yes.
Yeah, most of the loans are federal though.
Yeah.
So I mean,
So
the government basically took over all the loans about 10 years ago. So it's very few
Mm.
loans that are not government.
their interest
And
rate's a lot better too. The private.
oh, yeah, because they're set by a private market. So again, government, and this is the basis of capitalism, is that, so the basis of the real definition of fascism is a state-run economy. When the government controls every business, that's fascism. And an example might be during COVID when the government, whether it's Democrat or Republican, shut down every business. And so we had a Republican president, a Democrat Congress. I don't know who to blame, but that's an example of fascism. Now, I'm not saying the U.S. is fascist. That's just an example and a horrific one. It was overturned by every court that made a decision on it. But it also, the theory was that it saved lives. We don't know how many lives were saved because furniture stores were closed down. So, some
Or how
things
many lives lose because of the lockdown.
Yeah, I mean, there's that issue as well. There's certainly, we have kids that didn't go to school. There's rising depression. There's supposedly rising suicide rates. All the data on that's unclear. There's people who needed medical treatment for other things but didn't get it. So there's that whole argument. But I don't know the answers to that. I have no idea. I'm not saying anything specifically. Please don't cancel me. I have no clue at that. It's great that businesses were locked down because fascism is okay in some cases. Maybe, I don't know. But that's an example of fascism. But the student loan industry was taken over by the government about 10 years ago. And of course, it's not going to be as good as the private trading of student loans because it's not efficient.
Yeah. So the private one, like I could get like a 1.5% interest. Yeah.
Student loan?
Mm-hmm. Privately, the variable one.
That's pretty low. I mean, that's lower than you can't get that anymore.
5%. No, it's this right now.
Well, why would someone? But this is the way investing works. Like, why would someone lend you money when I can get more than 1.5%?
Well, maybe because they don't have the credit. Maybe they don't have. I'm
saying I could buy T-bills. I could buy government bonds for more than 1.5% now.
I don't know. I'm just saying that privately you could borrow money a lot cheaper.
I do believe you could buy it a lot cheaper. That makes sense because, again, it's more efficient. There's more competition. The government is just using a formula to set the interest rates. So that's the inefficient, stupid way to do it. That's like the Chinese or Russian 5-year plan way of doing things. How can you make a 5-year plan for the economy when we don't even know what's happening tomorrow? And setting interest rates without having a real efficient market is almost like doing the same thing. So again, my conclusion is it's kind of unfair. It is unfair to certain categories of individual, plus mildly unfair to the taxpayer, plus is a regressive tax. But the positive is that all these people who borrowed the money, I don't blame them. They deserve their money back. They were scammed by the education system and the government, which manipulates tuitions, forces you to not get rid of this debt in a bankruptcy, and does all sorts of other bad things about this debt. So it's. I do think it's good for these people who got it, but it's also fair to people who take advantage
really need it.
Yeah, well, it's good for people who need it. It might be unfair to people who don't get it, who also need it, but also it's good for people who take advantage of opportunities. So I wish I had started new businesses during COVID because there was so much money sloshing around. So again, don't get angry. Don't argue on Twitter. Start a business.
Yes. I will start it tomorrow.
Wait, no, you can't because I'll rip up your passport.
Oh, shit. Okay. Continue work for James.
Well, thank you very much, you guys. And
thank you.
Thank you.
Let's talk soon.
Yes.
Okay.
Let's talk soon.
GNC has the weight loss solutions you've been looking for, with no prescriptions, no sky-high costs, and no hassle. Hunger-satisfying, high-protein Total Lean Shake 25 can help you feel fuller longer. And Slim Vance XP is clinically shown to help you shed pounds fast. See results in just 2 weeks. Try one or try them together. Start your weight loss journey today by visiting your local GNC. Or just pick up your phone and go to gnc.com. We're here to help you lose weight. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Entresto, sacubitril valsartan tablets, is the #1 heart failure brand prescribed by cardiologists and has helped over 1 million people with heart failure. It's a prescription medicine that treats adults with long-lasting chronic heart failure and works better when the heart cannot pump a normal amount of blood to the body.
Don't take Entresto if pregnant. It can cause harm or death to an unborn baby. Don't take Entresto with an ACE inhibitor or aliskiren, or if you've had angioedema with an ACE or ARB. Don't take with aliskiren or within 36 hours of taking an ACE inhibitor. The most serious side effects are angioedema, low blood pressure, kidney problems, or high blood potassium. Angioedema is swelling of your face, lips, tongue, and throat that may cause death. If it causes difficulty breathing, get emergency help.
Ask your doctor about Entresto. To learn more, visit support.entresto.com or call 833-446-6699. For pricing, visit Entresto.com/cost. If you can't afford your medication, Novartis may be able to help.